After watching this video, you will become a lot better drone pilot, because we're gonna go through the 10 most common mistakes new and intermediate drone pilots do, so you can avoid crashing and do other stupid things. And I also will throw in 3 bonus tips at the end. The first mistake I hear a lot about, that is to not setting the correct return to home setting. The return to home setting, that is deciding what the drone is going to do whenever it loses the connection between the remote and the drone. So when you can't control it, what is the drone going to do? So return to home should be set to return to home. That means that you're going to return to where you took off, so you know that the drone is always coming back. But there are some situations where you should not have return to home. The first situation is if you use it for active track. So for example, if you're using the drone to track yourself when you're running or biking or doing something else, you don't want the drone to return to where you took off because you're not there anymore. Like here where we have all these light fixtures hanging in wires. Or like here where we have these nasty power lines. They can cause real troubles if you go flying here. Or anything else that is on top of you. Like here for example, if I had a drone to follow me here and track me here, it would have been a bad idea to have it to return to home. Then you want the drone to hover instead. But never land, because if it lands, then it lands wherever it is. The next common mistakes I see, that is that you're not setting the correct return to home altitude. And that is very important, because when the drone initiates the return to home procedure, it sends up to the preset height. So the first thing I usually do, that is to take off. I'm gonna fly up and then I'm gonna do a 360 turn, so I can see where is the highest obstacle. And then I'm gonna fly there, and then I'm gonna see how high up it is, and then I'm gonna take that height plus about 10 or 15 or 20 meters, so I know that the drone is gonna fly safely above all the obstacles that it can run into. The third thing, that is to not use active track and parallel when you have obstacles that you can fly into. Because the DJI Mini 3 Pro doesn't have any sideways obstacle sensors. Like here for example, if I would have tracked myself on the side here and the drone is here, it would probably run into one of these trees. So in those situations, use active track behind instead and not parallel. The fourth thing, that is something that I run into myself sometimes, and that is that I think I'm in cinematic mode, but I am actually in normal mode. Then how does that work? Well, when the drone restarts, when it has been shut off, then it always returns to normal no matter what setting you have here. So here for example, I just restarted the drone, and as you can see, the toggle switch is set to cinematic C, but in the display it says normal mode. So sometimes I'm taking off, I see that I'm in cinematic mode on the remote, but because I never switched to cinematic mode after I started up the drone will still be in normal mode. And that is of course really good if you are in sport mode and then you take off and you are actually normal mode, so you have obstacle avoidance sensors active. But when you think you are in cinematic mode, but you are in normal mode, that can cause some issues. So have as a habit that you always change this one or set it to normal before you take off. The fifth thing, that is that people are a little bit too cocky sometimes and they turn off the obstacle avoidance sensors. And then you don't remember to turn them on again. And that can cause real issues, because then you will fly into things. If I should fly through something really narrow and I'm 100% sure that I'm going to do it without flying into things, then you're going to turn it off. But all the time otherwise, just keep the obstacle avoidance turned on, because they are there to help you. The sixth thing is that you don't realize that you are in sports mode. Or actually you know that you're in sports mode, but you don't think about that the obstacle avoidance sensors are disabled in sports mode. So make sure that you take a look here, what is the toggle set to, and you have to set it after you take off. So just remember, obstacle avoidance sensors are turned off in sports mode. The seventh mistake that I see often is that you are in cinematic mode, but you haven't gone into the settings and reduced the flight speed for cinematic mode, which means that it flies pretty fast. And if you are in cinematic mode, or at least when I'm using cinematic mode, I would like to fly really, really slow. So go into the settings and reduce speed for cinematic mode. The eighth thing is that you're flying over water. and that is not the problem. The problem is that you're flying too low when you're flying over water, because the downward facing sensors that the DJI Mini 3 Pro has, those can have a really hard time to detect shiny surfaces like water, metal, or in some cases ice. When it fails to detect the surface, it doesn't know the elevation, and then you can crash again. So be careful when you fly over water. I usually never fly below 5 meters of height, and I prefer to stay around 10 or above, and that is about 33 feet or something like that. So be careful, don't crash into water. We're already on point number 9, and I have so many more things to share with you. Tip number 9 is that you haven't purchased the DJI Care. And I mean, that is just such a peace of mind, because if you crash, you can send it into DJI and they will replace it for a small fee. I crashed this DJI Mini 3 Pro not long ago, and I got a brand new drone for just $65. And if I wouldn't have that DJI Care, well, it would have been really, really expensive. So it's worth it. You should always activate the DJI Care and buy that when you buy the drone, because if, or actually when you're gonna crash your drone, it's not gonna break the bank. The 10th thing I would like to bring to this list, that is that you're not investing in these propeller guards. And they are really, really handy, because if you don't have them, their wings are just flapping around like this, and it's really, really annoying, especially when you're gonna have the drone in your bag. And with this little clap, you just put it on like this, and the propellers are fixed and perfect, and it's not rattling around at all. And I'm gonna drop links to everything in the description box below, of course. And now to the bonus tips. And this bonus tip, that is really important. And that is because you can't always trust the built-in map that you have in the drone. Because sometimes there are no flight zones, they're not in these maps. If you fly there in real life, it's your responsibility to make sure that you're flying where you're supposed to fly. So check with the official flight maps and make sure that you're allowed to fly where you're about to fly. For example, the place where I'm right now. Here it looks like I'm allowed to fly, but it's actually a helicopter airport just 500 meters that direction, so I'm not allowed to fly here, but that is not in this remote and this map. So always check with the public resources to see if you're actually allowed to fly where you are. So for the second bonus tip, if I wanted to fly away somewhere, and I would like to fly further away than within line of sight, or I have permission to do that, well, then just make sure that you don't have tailwind when you fly away, because when the drone warns that you're out of battery and you think, oh, now it's going to be nice to fly back, then you will run out of battery and you will never get the drone back home to you again. So be sure to fly in the correct direction so you don't have tailwind. And if you have tailwind, don't deplete your battery too much so you can't come back. So for the third bonus tip, that is, if you are on a beach, for example, you should never ever take off from the beach, because if you do, you will get sand into the drone, and you definitely don't want to have any sand into this drone. Instead, what you should do is to master the hand technique so you can take off and land safely in your hand. I actually have a dedicated video for how to take off and land in your hand, and I have a link to that one below. The next thing we're going to do, that is to see each other in that video, because I can't wait to see you in another video. So see you in that one. Bye.